what I used to think is, the number of women where whoever is
Mm.
like uses the Royal Enfield, who drives the Royal Enfield, right? You know
Yeah.
how we look at them in the road
We
when
look at
they're,
them as cool, right? Like, oh my God,
yeah,
like
but at the
that's a heavy
same
bike.
time,
And
yeah,
so I thought for today's, episode, I'll start with a little, anecdote. So this is one YouTube influencer that I follow. So she struggles with PCOS. Okay. So she went to this doctor and she was trying to figure out, what kind of a fitness regimen she should follow. And she was looking at strength training. So she was looking at weights. And this doctor she was seeing, the doctor was like an old elderly woman. Okay. And this doctor told her, oh no, don't do weights because if you do weights, you would gain muscle like a man. And then this kind of, made her stop in tracks because, this girl was actually like the YouTube influencer I follow. She actually has like a app she follows. She gets a, personal fitness trainer and she's getting this advice from like a legit fitness trainer. So when she goes to the doctor says something that's extremely on the other, end of the spectrum where she says, you're a woman, you cannot do, strength training because that would mean that you would look like a man. So I think this is something related to what we're going to speak today. Do you want to kind of make your comments on this? What do you think about this?
I think that's, I want to say stupid, but then yeah, it doesn't make sense actually. And I think one thing why I wanted to talk about this topic was recently for Christmas my aunt visited, right? And then she was really very fit in general because she's like really a woman who goes out into the field and works. But then this time she said, I can't sit on the floor, I can't bend my knees, and I have problem. And the first thing that comes to our mind is maybe my calcium is low. Maybe I need to eat a lot, drink a lot of milk, or I need calcium. But the thing is, I said, do you use your muscles much? Do you use your knees much? Do you do any sort of exercises? And she said, no, but I think it's all, I should just take supplements and I'll be fine. So this is one of the common things we see in women is after the age of even 25, 30, 35, our muscles start to degenerate. So what happens is when you use less of these muscles, it kind of, it doesn't, you have don't have the flexibility for the ligament or the, things that is normally working is not there. So I think the first important aspect is trying to see that we need to make the listeners understand, we need to break this myth that is revolving around strength training, and we also want all of them to kind of take this as a lifestyle change, right? So I think that's kind of my perspective on whole aspect of strength training.
So what you're saying is, it's not that age automatically makes you weak as a person, but it's actually your lifestyle choices. So this would imply that women, when they don't work out, they are making a choice to become weak. So it's not age related, it's your choices related. Is that right?
Yeah, it's like, in the ancient times, I was reading when I was doing research for this, I was reading in the ancient times that women were used to be the strongest, right? They used to carry children and go to the fields and work. They used to be one of the strongest. But what happened is over the years, this concept of strong kind of was seen in a very negative light, and they started to over adore or glorify the damsel in distress concept, like women has to be weak and fragile, and so that a man can come and help them, and things like that became very predominant. It kind of became a beauty standard that's really pathetic, to be honest.
uh, this kind of doesn't add up, right? I mean, if you look at women from the ancient times, they were strong and they were, out there doing whatever they wanted to. They were hunting, they were gathering, they were doing childbirth, they were doing child rearing. And I think in like ancient matriarchal societies, you also see that women were the, wise leaders. Right, you go to women to learn. Like women were, I think even today you see old women still being very useful in society, and if this was the place of women back then, why did they give it up to become weak and fragile? This beauty standard doesn't make sense, right? Why would we give that up? Why would we give that power up for this?
I think there was a shift that happened, right? So there was a time when women were when they were healthier and where they were curvier and had a bit of wide hips. That was considered to be very good. That was considered to be attractive, especially in terms of fertility, especially in terms of health and wellness, and also because a woman is like a strong foundation for the family, right? So she was supposed to be the strongest among the family because she's running and managing a lot of things. She needed that health. So that was seen as a prosperity and seen as attractiveness. But I think around 1920s is when this whole thing changed. There was a shift in terms of beauty standards because what they did was the media at that time portrayed women who are, heavier as somebody who's lazy or who's very, who's not taking care of themselves. And it's not sort of, it became sort of that they had to lose weight, and this media and all the social pressure around that time changed the whole shift from a healthy woman to a much more thinner and weaker woman. I think that's when this all changes kind of started.
When you say, that the beauty standard changed, uh, my question is, where did this beauty standard stem from? Because if you look at like the practicalities of it, a strong woman any day is better than a weak woman, right? So, what do you think was the intention behind changing the standard where we convinced women that be helpless, be fragile, so that you are well liked? How did that shift actually even take place? Because if you look at the current trends, right, I think we kind of went from size zero to like the Kylie Jenner body, which is like the hourglass shape. And then now we're kind of into abs in women. We like muscular women. So there is a shift that is taking place, but I don't think it's a complete shift as well, because I think there was this recent viral video that floated where this famous actress comments on Bipasa Pasu's body type, and she says she looks like a man, right? And that was very controversial, but at the same time it was that kind of an idea was something that was very prevalent maybe just 5 to 10 years back, when we looked at a woman who's going to the gym, like the weightlifters for instance. We kind of associate strong women with masculinity, and that kind of reduces their attractiveness level, right? So why do you think attractiveness became a thing that had to do with weakness?
I think one of the things with all of these shifts that you were talking about, the myths that you were talking about around weight training and the reluctance for women to kind of accept this weight training, I think it all what I used to think is, the number of women where whoever is
Mm.
like uses the Royal Enfield, who drives the Royal Enfield, right? You know
Yeah.
how we look at them in the road
We
when
look at
they're
them as cool, right? Like, oh my God,
yeah,
like
but at the
that's a heavy
same
bike.
time,
And
yeah, but at the same time, we also look at them as not very common and normal. It's sort of in our heads that's something that's been
okay.
done by only few women, and sort of if they are like in a societal lens, they are seen as a rebel, right? So in the same way, muscular
Oh,
women,
that's
yeah.
interesting. So a woman who is like who cannot be controlled is a woman that you don't want to mess with. So stay away from her. So for the men or the women to find another woman attractive, she has to be easy to control. Wow.
Yeah. And I think as women kind of start to go to the gym, it sort of indicates that they are being independent, right? That they are taking care of
Exactly.
themselves, they are loving themselves. This is all not something that the patriarchal world wants us to. When we go to the gym, it kind of makes the woman want to be herself, and it also tells the world that I have a life, I'm going to live my life my own way, and I'm doing this for myself. That's not the narrative most women have been forced to, I mean, most women have been told to get into. Most women have
Yeah,
to
it's not a
always
very
love
common
others.
narrative to have. Yeah, like it's
Huh.
not a common like I think we spoke about this we speak about this often, where like we tell ourselves we're selfish, and then that's like a compliment, and that's how we kind of move forward, because deep down there's still that pattern in us that makes us feel guilty whenever we do something for ourselves. So it's like, we as friends, we kind of do that thing where, like, yeah, go after it. We sometimes need that push from someone, because we know that the world is not going to push us forward.
Hmm. And I think one movie, Tamil movie, comes to my mind where there's this three couples. They talk about three couples. I think one of the couples is a psychologist. I don't know the
Oh,
name.
Irigupatra.
Erigapatra, yeah. In that, there was a third couple, remember, who she is like fat and her husband kind of
Oh, yeah,
sees her
yeah.
as unattractive. And then she goes to the gym, and there was a female trainer there. Female trainer, I guess, I think.
No, I think it's a male trainer because she'll end up getting into competition and she'll even win right towards the end.
Yeah. So basically, that when she gets into that whole sort of gym routine, right? She does not want to lose weight for herself. But initially, it was a external validation. She wanted validation from her husband that she is good enough. But then eventually, what happens is when she starts to do it, she starts to have dreams and desires that she wants to be a certain way, she wants to look a certain way, she wants to feel a certain way. And I think at the by the end of the competition, where she feels is that she feels accomplished, she did that for herself. And at that time, she didn't need that validation from her husband at all. Things may
Yeah,
have worked out, but then she felt free for the first time. And I think all of these body standards and the need to be weak is sort of being told to us by the social media, and these things where around us thin is a new beauty sort of a thing, that is like really messed up our heads, right?
I think that's true. When you look at the mirror, you don't look at like what you are. You kind of compare yourself with a standard. So even if you're actually good looking, even if people would find you attractive, because you have like a weird standard in your head, that reflection that you see is never good enough for you, which is very problematic because uh you don't have to look that way to feel useful, to be actually adaptive in this world. Life is not really for you to aesthetically be the same. There's also this weird standard that women cannot age, right? Like I'm supposed to look like a 18-year-old forever. Why? It's cool to but then when you look at it for men, men get to age graceful, like
The
age,
pepper
they don't have
hair,
to
the
age
salt and
gracefully.
pepper hair, the white
Yeah, like
hair.
I want to have salt and pepper hair and be considered cool because it is cool, right? And yeah, so this is something that I think we need to like think about very intentionally and move forward with how we see strength training, which kind of brings me to my next question.
Hmm.
Now, for a lot of us, gym membership is not something that is easy to kind of get, right? Not
Hmm.
because it's not something that is accessible, but because you kind of, when you're starting off, you feel a little shy. It's a little out of your comfort zone. So is there any way you can do strength training without weights,
Hmm.
where I don't need any equipment, I don't need to invest money in that? Is there any way for me to improve, gain muscle without using with money?
Hmm. I think which is very important question, because what happens is, in terms of the gym aesthetics, right? They made it look very posh and costly, and I don't think so. It is about that, because if you actually look at it, the most effective way to train and strengthen your muscles is by doing basic. Home workouts with your own body weight. So if you can see calisthenics, Pilates, and all these things, they all use their own body weight. So even yoga, for that matter, it strengthens certain types of yoga, certain form of yoga kind of strengthens your muscles and your overall conditioning as well. It doesn't. So usually we as a woman have been going towards cardio, or mostly it's walking, if you're like a very during those time easiest ways to walk. But other than that, I think, because if you kind of keep getting older, your muscles will weaken. So walking is actually bad for you if you're not conditioning it enough, not like strengthening it enough, right?
Oh.
So strength training is gonna be your key life changing thing. If you're gonna start at home, you don't need gym, you don't need any of those fancy proteins. Just take enough, because when you're, of course, when you're, as we spoke about the roti rice episode, right? So we need also a fueling equivalent to what kind of lifestyle we are doing. So protein is something that's seen as a muscle food. So if you're gonna try these home workouts, doing this squats, or training with your body weight, also try to intake a lot of protein, which is healthy protein, or those protein powders.
Maybe we should, like give a link in the description below where we guide our listeners to go and check out a few pages where they help them with workout routines, because we're not going to do that in this channel, but I think, just as a way to give direction, that might be something that's helpful. Uh, Also, because you mentioned diet, I'm curious. Uh, in the Indian context, a lot of people do follow a vegetarian diet,
Mm-hmm.
right? Not a vegan diet, just a vegetarian diet. So, what do they do for protein sources? Because you know that meat is a definite no-no. Some vegetarians eat eggs. Eggs are a good source of protein, but most again don't,
Hmm.
right? So, what do you suggest? They do you Would you suggest like protein powder or any other supplements, or what do you suggest?
I think one thing is, even with a diet, like even with a non-vegetarian diet, I think it's important to add colorful food as much as we can, because we as a woman, we need many supplements that we are not having. But in terms of proteins, I think we have a lot of options in terms of vegetarian protein, soya, paneer, and tofu, and all of this. But I know it's all very fancy, but then even those lentils and dals, and the spices and all of these nuts, these are something that they can add a handful. So of course it has to be, the quantity has to be a little balanced, because it's going to be much lesser than what a meat can provide. But if you're feeling that you're at a stage where you're doing very heavy weight training or strength training, that will happen gradually. So if you're somebody who's starting, you're going to start with very minimal weight training, and eventually you can increase the intensity, the amount of times that you do it, and the lapses you do it. But then this all has to be, in terms of protein powder, you need to talk to a nutritionist. So most often gyms would have a nutritionist, or you can talk to a doctor, and they can probably suggest, and they will test the amount of thing that you might need, and they will do some blood work and tell you what you might need in terms of your lifestyle, your age, and the whole your body related illness. If you have any conditions you have, they will moderate it. So I think I would personally won't suggest protein powder, because I'm not a nutritionist, but I would suggest that you do a complete research on how many grams of protein that you need, and then based on that you can get it from the vegetarian food options that I've just mentioned.
Okay. Another question related to again health risks. We've spoken very positively about strength training as a whole, but I want to talk about exceptions, right? So, who cannot do strength training? And we know that from a medical perspective, this is an advice that pregnant women get, not to lift any heavy objects when they are pregnant, right? So, does this mean that pregnant women or women in their childbearing years are weaker, and so it's better for them to avoid strength training?
I think one of the very core ideology that revolves around pregnancy is that they think pregnant women need to rest all the time. And even those who are trying for pregnancy are asked to eat and rest, and no physical activity at all. So I think I've seen this in my experience with the hospital I was working. All the women were given this suggestion from their family members or their, in-laws and things like that. But it is really, really going to be messing up your whole experience of pregnancy. How your childbirth is going to get affected if you don't move and exercise. Because if you want regular normal delivery, exercise is very essential. So even if it's like walking, it has to be done every day as much as you can, right? But in terms of strength training, I would always recommend, in terms of pregnancy, people who are already pregnant, just try to don't start anything new in your pregnancy. Just after getting pregnant, don't start something new. So if you've been doing something, say if you've been going to the gym regularly even before you were pregnant, you can continue that at moderate amounts. If you've been running at moderate amounts, you can probably do a slight jogging in the first trimester.
Probably those like low intensity
Low
workouts, right?
intensity workout. So, and also try to move as much as possible, bend, move, lift. Like if you're lifting, if you've been lifting for a long time, that means your body is in a place to lift that many amounts. Say if you've been lifting 5 kgs, normally 5 kgs is like nothing for you if you're going to lift, right? So I'm saying, if don't lift extra after you get pregnant, right? So, and also people who have certain conditions, the doctors would definitely warn against. For example, if they have a weak uterus, complicated pregnancy, or if they've already had 2 to 3 pregnancies. So there are a lot of conditions where people are advised against, right? So for them, they definitely need to rest, because for them it is very complicated pregnancy. But for people who are normal, who are moving, I don't think so you need to completely shut down physical activity, but you need to not do something new in terms of weight training, and you need to cut down the weight lifting after the first trimester, so from the second trimester.
One more medical health risk related question. Are there any other things that people should know about in terms of what to do after or pre-workout, in terms of energizing yourself so that you don't hurt your muscles, you don't do something extreme?
That's really beautiful question. You know why? Because many people, they do, when we give them exercise regimen as a suggestion, they go do, and they complain about body pain, right?
Yeah.
So the body pain and the body cramps are gonna be a part of the parcel when you start moving, right? But then that can be reduced if you warm up properly, right? So basically you're sleeping and you wake up, and of course you cannot if you start running right after you wake up, your body is not yet in a ready moment. It is not charged, your muscles are not ready, it's still sleeping, it's still sluggish. So you need to warm up. So if you can actually, I think this also we can put it in the description below, so basic warm ups that you can do pre workout and post workout. That is the main thing. Post workout is going to reduce your pains and cramps after working out to a larger extent. So, and also in terms of energy level, you can take some sort of a supplement. I mean, in terms of food supplement, I meant like bananas or dates. Dates are really good. If you can carry, dates are something that works at a very slower pace, right? It releases the energy at a very sustained level. Bananas, on
There's
the other
no
hand, gives you a
glucose
push.
spiking. Yeah.
Yeah, the spikes are more maintained in terms of dates. So if you can carry dates or have a few dates before your workout, that will give you energy as well. But I personally, I am not a fan of working out empty stomach. But if it's something that has been working out for you, well and good. But for most women, if you trained before, and if you feel sluggish through the middle of the workout, then you know you need to eat something. So that's your indicator, your body is telling, no, I can't do this workout, right? So yeah, that's something about fueling and
So
taking care.
basically, it's important that we feel good before and after so that we continue consistently working out, right? I think, one thing that I would want our listeners to know at this point is I hope, the things that we've discussed is something that has not just, informed you, but also it motivates you to go out there and, gain muscle. Because gaining muscle is not just about looking good, it's about feeling good, it's about increasing your lifespan. So, as much as body image matters to us women, it's important that we also focus on, feeling good and feeling capable. These are two things that's going to change our lives for the better. And yeah, anything that you want to say?
So one thing I wanted to kind of reinforce is that these beauty standards and these body standards, which I think it all comes from one place, which is the male gaze, right? So this male gaze is just that one man woke up one day and he thought pedophilia is a new norm, and he thought that that is the beauty standard, and now we are just trying to chase that, and it's disgusting, it's pathetic. And I really want to emphasize to everyone, do not be a damsel in distress, because even men are right now having a lot of distress and they want us to take care of them. So I don't think so they are going to come and save you in any way possible, so don't expect it at all.
I think, this is something you had mentioned. To be strong is the new sexy. I think with that, we'll come to a conclusion. I'll repeat that again because I really love it so much. To be strong is the new sexy.
I think it's a good place to kind of stop and leave our listeners. And I think we'll come back again with more of this to let you know how to be a better individual, happy women as possible, I guess.
Yeah.
If you like our content, do follow us on Instagram. YouTube
YouTube,
and
Spotify.
Spotify, and also comment your feedback to us. And also make sure that you subscribe and like and everything. And until next time, we see you. Ta ta.
Bye.
Went to the
On the
gym
next
trainer and
episode of
asked this
Sugar,
question.
Spice, and
Okay, so
Everything
I said,
Chaos.
brother, like, if I do all of this, would I become like very, very big and very muscly and I would like a man? I don't want that. And then, what he said? He showed me few of the boys in the gym